And we'll call to order the Tuesday, June 4th meeting of the Town Council. Do you want to do a roll call?
Councilmember Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Kuhnhart.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Present.
Mayor Ravazio.
Here. Can you join me in the salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we now have open time for public comment. Any member of the public may address the council concerning any item that is not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and you will be given the opportunity to speak about anything you want for up to 3 minutes. But we cannot answer questions or discuss anything that comes up in this. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Basha Randolph, 48 Alta Way. I'm just bringing up that there's discussions between the fire department about taking our big eucalyptus tree that is right in front of our house at 48 Alta Way. And that if there's a conversation to remove it, if the town would going to take any action, if we at least would be notified, the 5 people around the tree. That's 48 Alta Way, 46 Alta Way, 475 Sausalito, and 1 Madrono. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. And if anybody else wants to speak, if you want to line up behind the microphone, that's great. That'll help keep things rolling.
Jim Robinson, 25 Ash Avenue. Thank you for the air conditioning tonight. It's nice to have a cool place to go to on a Tuesday night.
It is.
I just want to thank town staff for the efforts thus far that have been taken to help mitigate our parking problem we have on Apache and Lakeside and Birch and Corte Madera and Madera Gardens. And I'm hopeful that we can find a solution. We had a meeting with principal, as you probably have heard, and we have a community meeting, I understand it, to be held soon. A little bit of the history. A year ago, I was walking along Apache and I saw 5 or 6 cars, many of them with permits, parking, and was curious about why they were parking on Apache. So I attended the Tam High School District's about a year ago board meeting, and I was told that they have more kids, more cars, and those that have permits sometimes park on those locations for a variety of reasons. I also attended the Larkspur City Council meeting a year ago, and I heard they were considering having permanent parking, and I expressed some concerns, having had experience in other communities. We've done that, and it's just gone from one person's street to another person's street. So while that might be a solution, I think there are some problems associated with it. I was told that there was also, upon review of the parking being utilized by the staff at Redwood High School, I found generally each day somewhere between 40 and 50 vacant spaces. I even found some 17 or 18 spaces that were allocated to the Tam High School District staff, even though there are like only 4 or 5 staff people on board at the campus at any one time. I did not count visitor parking. I did not count the lunch group parking either. So I think I identified, at least to some extent, some available spaces, and I know the school district says they plan to look at that. But my concern is this, that the policy now prohibits those who park on campus from leaving campus for lunchtime. So I think even though we may generate some new spaces and maybe an alternative to these students, a lot of them will still continue to want to park on Apache and Lakeside and Birch. Interestingly enough, the problem now has left Larkspur. They are able to enforce it at Riviera Circle, but it's now on that private portion of Birch, which actually is in the city of Larkspur. So we have upwards of like 45 cars there every day now. When you visit that same street on a weekend, because the houses side that street, you will not see any cars parked there. So it's a continuing problem. It's only going to get worse, in my opinion. I'm just hopeful that we can find a solution. My concern is this, that we have middle school kids on bikes, elementary school kids at Neil Cummins on bikes in the morning at the same time. And I have noticed on several occasions, I've mentioned this to staff, that I've seen some reckless driving at lunchtime because there's only a few minutes they have to get in and out of Madera Gardens to get lunch. So I'm hopeful that the council at some point in time after we have these community meetings and hopefully find some solution, you'll agendize this, and maybe we even need some council muscle to assist in this, because I'm not sure that the This is not a high priority, I believe, for the TAM school board, all the other issues they have to deal with, because I think there are available parking spots on campus. There's also available spots at San Andreas, which is extension school near the campus, that could be available for additional parking. So I think we need to think outside the box. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Your buzzer's not working? Okay. Okay.
Okay. Felice Ludington. I live at 19 Pixley in the condos there, right across from the green area at the park. I wish I could have been at the meeting on the 21st. I was in New York, so I couldn't. I'm just coming to express my opinion about that site being a possibility of a dog park. I've lived here for 29 years, and the area's gotten, well, you were just talking about parking, more and more confused and more full of cars. On the weekend, it's impossible to find a place to park anyway, and last night when I got home from work, I had to park over by the tennis courts because there's no parking on the street, there's no parking on the other side of that little area. So there are other reasons why I don't think it's suitable for a dog park. I think that my property values would definitely go down, and my property is the most valuable thing I own. I also worry about there being a lot of little kids around. There are already kids around in the park itself. You're just putting them closer to a really busy street. So thank you very much for your time. I just wanted to have that noted.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vasvi Basaran. I'm one of Felice's neighbors. I have been a resident and homeowner at the 19 Pixley for 28 years now. And parking over time has gotten more and more difficult on weekends, as Felice mentioned. It is pretty impossible to find a spot. And when I come home from work, a lot of times it's very difficult to find a convenient parking space. I have to go sometimes by the tennis courts and sometimes away into Pixley to find a place, and making a dog park in there I don't think is a very good idea, because it's going to make it busier and make parking even more of an issue. So again, I'm sorry I missed the meeting on the dog park issue. I was out of town, but I just wanted to register my objections against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else?
Lucinda Smith, 46 Alta Way. We've noticed, and there's been a huge amount of traffic that goes along Alta Way as a connector point between Camino Alto and Sausalito down. It's a way to go around any traffic holdups or congestion on 101. We've noticed ways sends the people up there and all around. We've brought it to attention of town staff. We've had the police chief up there and police captain, and an officer. We did a count. The count was something like 50 cars within about a 15-minute time period on a Friday afternoon. It's awful. The other thing is that there are very large trucks that go up there, and there's no sign that tells them not to. There's a sign down here not to go up, I believe it's Chapman. There's a sign at Camino Alto not to come into Chapman, but there's none at Alta Way and Sausalito, right at the tree where Basha Randolph spoke of, which we do not want removed, by the way. But anyway, we would like to have the same 3 signs that are in the other locations added there. One for local access only, one for the, we would like to see it 15 miles an hour, but the sign right there at now is 20 miles an hour. It's an advisory, we understand that, but at least people will hopefully think twice about it. And we want to have the sign that says no large trucks. So it's not anything new and inventive. We just need it up there to kind of control some of the traffic issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at open time? Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. Hearing none, we're going to move on. There are no presentations, so we're now going to move on to the consent calendar, the purpose of which is to group items together which are routine or have been discussed previously and do not require further discussion. They'll be approved by a single motion. Any member of the town council, staff, or the public may request removal of an item for discussion. Rescheduling will be at the discretion of the mayor and town council. Is there anybody who'd like to remove an item from the consent calendar?
I would like to recommend an edit to 4B.
We need to remove 4B.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anybody else? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, when you get to 4B, I'm going to recuse myself. That contract concerns my firm, and so I need to recuse and leave the room.
Okay. Why don't we handle 4B now, so get out of here. Please. Please.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay.
Page 5. Third paragraph down, it reads effective March 18th, Judith Prop. And then the next line reads effective June 4th, 2019, Jamie Hereda. I think there needs to be a paragraph break between those two lines.
Okay.
So,
Page 5.
4B, page 5. So you want to put a paragraph break in between that, effective
between the
March 1st?
effective March 1,
Okay, so that's another
2018.
paragraph. Okay, is there anything else on 4B?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. One other correction. It'll be page 4 of the agreement. It's the third whereas. Last sentence, it should say services beginning March, and that date should be 2018. We have one too many numbers.
No. 2018
Yes.
on the third whereas. Okay.
Correct.
Rebecca, you got all that? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion on item 4B? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to just have some further discussion about this increase. The fees that I went in and got, apparently I didn't get enough of the backup documentation that supported this item. But the amount of money that we are paying the attorney to attend these meetings and do the work for the town seems to be very high, and now to increase it is, I think, a little bit something that the town council needs to think seriously about. We are getting asked to raise fees everywhere, and you know where those fees come from. It's we property owners and homeowners and residents. And it's got to be curtailed somewhere. Somebody has to take bite the bullet and not allow just a pass-through to fee increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on item 4B? Okay, hearing none, I will close public comment and I will bring it back to the discussion, to the council for discussion. Is there any comments or questions for staff or anybody have anything to add or?
Move approval of.
Mr. Ravazio, I apologize. I forgot one thing.
Could,
we reopen the public.
Second.
So you're gonna, okay, so we'll reopen public comment, okay.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. Get all nervous talking about in front of the group. Could we have some numbers? I'm sorry, I don't know what they all are. The ones, what the current hourly rate is, what the increase is going to bring it to. It says between 10 and 15. Could we have some numbers so that they appear in the minutes rather than just be buried in all the documentation?
Okay, thank you. So we're going to close public comment again, no problem.
Do you want to pull up the staff report?
Sorry,
Can you pull up the staff report?
Todd, did you want
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. And the fiscal impact of the staff report, we'll pull it up on the screen here, and I'm happy to give a copy of this page to anyone who would like it. But basically, the fiscal impact breaks down 3 areas of the increases. For basic town attorney services, again, there's that $10 to $15 increase, so it'll be going to $305 per hour. For specialized town services, it's $335 per hour. And this is our pass-through with, our plan, with Judith, and on planning projects, it's $365 an hour. And those services, again, are pass-throughs, where on projects, we're reimbursed for that. What I'll tell you is that when you look at these fees, we do have an attorney on the council who could probably confirm it. Our budget is about $250,000 for legal fees. And working in a city or town, having good representation in a good law firm that has a breadth of knowledge on not only planning, issues, but legal ones, is really important. And we can compare ourselves in the risk pool to 20 other member agencies. And currently, the town of Corte Madera is actually in the best legal situation of the other entities. And a large part of that is, there's luck, but it's the advice of your town attorney. And they just do a really good job. The fees are within the norm. They range for most cities and towns anywhere from $275. They can go up to, $500 in some cases. I'll tell you that, Teresa, just from personal experience and looking at the bills, I coordinate with our town attorney on weekends and on Sundays sometimes, and we're not charged that. And so I can't say enough about them. Their firm was the one that actually broke the JPA issue. There was not a JPA form since 2013 with CalPERS and all the issues we went through. They spearheaded that movement statewide, and it was their law firm. So I think our budget is reasonable per capita and per size. It's $250,000, and I think it's reasonable, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. So.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything, or I had one question. So I just want to clarify, this was published Friday, right? This report with these numbers in it, so it's been public knowledge since last Friday. Okay, I just want to clarify that. And I just wanted to add, if I can, to what Todd just said. I've been doing this for a while now, since 2007, and I have seen what has happened when you do not have a law firm who is very good at what they do. And the town gets in lots of trouble and lots of problems, and we used to be tied up in a lot of different lawsuits that went on forever. And again, part of it's luck, but I think part of it is just expertise as well. We have, I think, an exceptional law firm now that has given us, I think, just stellar advice, and I'm very much in favor of this.
So I totally agree with that. I always feel slightly awkward talking about attorney fee issues. Thank you, Todd.
It's probably less than what you get.
I'd rather not answer that. But there are two things. One thing that, Gene, you know what I'm talking about, is that the town council only makes two hiring decisions. One of them is our town manager, and the other one is the town attorney. Excuse me, losing my voice. I think that we made an excellent choice with her firm consistently, although it's hard for you to observe in the public way. The private advice, the consistent, regular, diligent responses she gives, the straightforward answers we get from her and the other members of her firm, the willingness to take calls at all times, the disciplined, sort of like in-depth knowledge she brings to the things we do, well worth it. The specific questions are, number one, are the rates published? On the last page of the staff report, it has the published amounts. It's $300 an hour, $305 an hour for basic services, $335 for specialized, which I don't fully know exactly what that is, but it's somewhere in the $350 an hour they get paid. I will tell you, a normal San Francisco city attorney is who specialize in this area might be double or triple that amount. Local attorneys are easily well in excess of that. I think we get very good service for what we pay for, and I'm frankly a big fan of what her whole firm does.
Agreed.
And, Mr. Mayor, I'll just back up that when I was in the corporate world, hiring counsel to close on real estate and renewable energy projects, we always sought good qualified counsel, and the rates were, and this is several years ago, $400 to $700 an hour. So this does not shock me. In fact, I think that we are getting a very good value.
Any other questions, comments, or a possible motion?
I'll move that we approve the agreement.
Second.
Well, with modifications. Sorry,
With the modifications?
yes.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, Rebecca?
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes. I think we need to bring the attorney back in. Maybe we need to bring the town manager back in. He's gone too.
Somebody send out the bloodhounds.
Oh, boy, you're in trouble. Thank you. Okay, moving on then. We
Move
still have
approval, move
two-
approval of the balance of the consent agenda now.
Second?
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, we have no public hearings. We have business items. Business item 6A, review of the proposed town operating budget for fiscal years 2019-20 and providing direction to staff. We are not approving a budget tonight. We are just reviewing the budget again and providing direction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is the second of three meetings about the budget. The first two are workshop format, and the third one will be the public hearing at our next meeting. You may have noticed that the budget looks similar to what we discussed last time. We are noting all the recommended changes from last meeting, this meeting, and from our committee meeting feedback, and we'll present that within the budget book next meeting. And so if we discuss the potential change, just know that it's noted and we will make that. We've also updated a few of the budget pages because we want to have a specific conversation with you tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to Daria.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. As the town manager just stated, this is the same budget in your packet that was presented the last time. There have been a few changes, which I will hand out. The first one contains...
Sorry, there's a single-page document you're in.
Yes, there's 3 pages each in those packets there. The first page is the summary page of the general fund, which shows the revenues and expenditures. And I've added at the bottom, under where it says ending balance, the 10% reserve, that there is a council resolution stating that that should be the reserve. So I've spelled that out, so it's there on its own, 10% of total expenditures and transfers out. And then also put in a line item which is showing the Park Madera Center deficit. So the bottom line shows the total balance, the total general fund balance. And then there are a few other small funds, the Affordable Housing Fund, the Beautification Fund, that roll up into that, which are listed on the following pages. And then, of course, the largest is the Sales Tax Override Fund, but that's part of the capital budget and not included here.
Excuse me, Daria, it's so that we can not go back later.
Yes.
I believe, but tell me if I'm wrong, that the Park Madera Center balance number, it reflects the aggregate debt outstanding. It is not the annual deficit. It's amount owing as a whole. Is that correct?
It's the amount that the general fund has paid toward the debt, the accumulated amount over the past several years since the debt was acquired. That's the amount that the general fund has subsidized Park Madera Center for.
Okay, but it's not an annual number.
No,
It's
that's
an
the
aggregate
total.
number.
That's the
Thank you.
total.
Thank you.
Yes.
Keep going.
At the bottom of the handout that I just handed out. So that's the first page that I made changes on. The next handout that I handed out, the fire department page, at the suggestion of the finance committee, I put a little chart at the bottom showing the actuals for the past several years, as well as the estimate for this year and the proposed budget for next year. So that is showing the actuals for going back to 2015-16, then in 16-17, when the town began sharing the services with the city of Larkspur's fire department and sharing a fire chief, you can see that the labor, and these are only the labor costs, went down by 11% And then in 17-18, there was a slight increase of less than 1%, and that did include a 3% increase to the salary schedule. And then in the current year, the consolidation was formalized and took effect, and labor costs, based on our estimate, will increase by about 2%. So this is just a little chart showing that. Doesn't include the FSLA payment that was made in 2016, because that was back pay for several years. But it does include overtime that will be reimbursed by the state.
And just really quick, it's a, as we talked about in the last budget, people were like trying to show like where is that cost savings that we talked about in 16, 17, 18, 19. And so because you can see where the budget up at the top where it's at 4.2 million and it jumps to 4.7, 4.9. Again, with the consolidation, and it's on the other sheet where you look at the fire authority, it's within the insurance fund. We move funds from Corte Madera and Larkspur into the authority, and so it's a pass-through. And so that's why you had the increase, but we wanted to show you apples-to-apples comparisons in 15, 16 before the consolidation. Total personnel cost on the labor side was 4.4 million. When we started sharing services, we merged the organizations at that point, pre-consolidation. That's the $500,000 that we talk about in savings. As you start to go through 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, you can see where it starts to trend upwards. But again, if you do the math, it's still about a $500,000 savings if we had our current personnel back in 15, 16. The exciting thing about the upcoming 2 fiscal years is we added 3 paramedics to the service and share them 50%. So we've actually added line staff paramedics to improve our service, and we still maintained that savings. And so that we wanted to show that for you moving forward.
And we've added a fire marshal as well?
We've also added a fire marshal, and we also share a battalion chief with Kentfield Fire, and so we've broadened our services.
Right. So we've improved service as well as saved money.
Yes.
Always a good thing.
Who does that?
Then the final sheet that I handed out, that's just the Central Marin Fire Department budget that shows some of the things that the manager was speaking about, how the insurance fund is a new item there that had previously been paid by Larkspur and by Corte Madera. So that's one of the main reasons for the increase. And then, obviously, this is the entire budget, and so Corte Madera would be responsible for half of this because Larkspur is responsible for the other half. So those are the only changes that I have from last time. What you have is exactly the same as was presented at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we will first do questions from the council. Are there any members of the council with questions for our staff about budget? Again, we did this 2 weeks ago, so we're somewhat familiar with it, so it's not like we're not paying attention. Okay, any member of the public wish to speak? I'm going to open up for public comment. If you have questions or comments, now is the time. Okay, hearing none, I will bring it back to the council. This is not a business item. We're not approving anything or taking any votes, but we are providing any further direction to the staff. Are there any council members with further direction? Sloan looked like you had something.
Just going to say, I'm good with it in every respect.
Okay.
My request is that you standardize where the tables are landscape or portrait. Okay.
I told her we're doing good if we're talking about that.
We're talking about
You got it, boss.
We're talking about using a computer. We're like way ahead.
And I just wanted to reflect, Daria, thank you very much for listening and reflecting just what we talked about the last time. Appreciate it.
Right. I mean, even with having the reserve line in there, it's just so much easier to tell what's going on. So thank you.
And I just want to thank you also. I know I sent you an email, but I missed your budget meeting last year. I was out, but this is great. This is incredible. This is such a huge improvement for the town, and I just want to thank you for everything you've done for us. So thank you. This is great. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so no further direction. Moving on to item 6B, review proposed capital improvement program and budget for fiscal years 2019-20 and 2020-21. And again, provide direction to staff as appropriate. We are not approving this budget tonight. We did do this in our last meeting 2 weeks ago, so we've been through this already. but we're going to go through it again, and we're going to allow for public comment and questions as well. Peter, I think you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. And so we're here to answer any questions if you have them from the last meeting. We did follow up, and we had a follow-up meeting with the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. And we had kind of a follow-up discussion from the last meeting. And so Karen Gerbosi and Jean Greenbaum, they're both here tonight, thankfully. John Howard, Steve Flayhive, and Carl Spursum are members of our Sales Tax Oversight Committee. And so we kind of took the conversation regarding facilities and really just expenditures of the sales tax measure, because our capital improvement budget really starts with that funding source. As an example, if you take this current fiscal year and then you take the next 5 fiscal years, and that's what's before you now, the next 5 fiscal years, we have a restricted funding stream of about $4 million, and we have approximately $30 million anticipated in sales tax measure monies. And so there's 2 conversations. One is the priorities that we've shared with the community, and also, items that we told the community that we would spend them on. And so what I wanted to do is kind of share a conversation and take the council through our conversation with the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, and please jump in if need be. And we kind of broke down the decision-making matrix into first, we know that the sales tax measure is unrestricted, but really the question is, and we talked about it briefly at the last meeting, what do we tell the voters in the 75 words or less? What do we tell the voters in our information campaign? And do we feel like this current CIP recommended budget is consistent with that? And so what I take you to is the Measure F webpage. This is really the history, dating back to when we started discussions. And you all have a copy, and I think there's some in the back for members of the community. The Vice Mayor put this together, but this is really all of the literature regarding Measure F that we really focused on in our education campaign. And the first is the 75 words or less. It's the ballot language, and then also the green sheet. And I'm just going to focus on the green sheet right now. And it's our 4-page flyer that we mailed out to the community members, every resident in the community. We also sent it out via social media to approximately 8,000 to 10,000 residents. And it was also the core document that we took everywhere we went. So on this site, all of our workshops are video recorded. All of our information is there. This was the single document that we talked to the community about. We explained the 75 words or less, what unrestricted meant, what the examples meant, what the priorities were. If you look on the first page of the document, there's a paragraph, and it's a narrative paragraph where we're trying to tell the story. It's something that we got, that's why we received a lot of support, 78% from the community, but also we had a lot of support from taxpayer groups because of the way we presented the story. When you look at it, it kind of talks about the big picture. There's no buzzwords. We're not trying to sell something. We're having a discussion. In the last paragraph, you can kind of see, it's the last paragraph, 3rd line, you can see community facilities is in there. At the time, we didn't necessarily know, what facilities would ultimately and what the projects would look like. But we knew there were issues. We knew, one, we had to first figure out, what are we going to do with the firehouse? Is the fire station right here, Station 14 with the consolidation, is it going to get knocked down and rebuilt? Can it be renovated, or are we going to move it somewhere else? We didn't know at the time, but we knew we were going to have to ultimately make a decision. Fast forward to now, we know what that is. We know that building is going to stay there. We know we can renovate it. And we know probably in the next 10 years we need to definitely do something about it. And those costs would be shared with Larkspur. The second one was, at the time that we were going through this, we actually had facility projects already in the sales tax measure budget. It was the intergenerational center improvement, and it was also the moving of staff. Remember, because where the intergenerational center is now, we had staff in the community center. That was already part of that discussion. It was something that we shared with the taxpayer groups as well. If you go to the fact sheet on the last page, there's 8 frequently asked questions, but there's 2 that are highlighted. And the first one is, what services and programs would the measure fund? And if you scroll down and we go through the town's infrastructure, you'll see the community facilities discussion. It is there. If you go to the second column under what spending needs are facing the town of Corte Madera, you'll also see community facilities is in that conversation. Now, at the time that we did this, And fast forwarding to today, would I provide more information? Would I want to? Of course, you know. I mean, I think you always want to do that, but we were forward thinking enough to know that we had a community facility infrastructure kind of conversation. So what I would tell the council, and you know, and what we talked about with the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, it's one thing that what's ever in my head, but you know, am I right or am I off base? And so after some healthy discussion and just focusing on, do we feel like, and we know the letter of the law can be used for anything, but do we feel like our information campaign was accurate and it accurately reflects what's in the capital improvement budget? And again, you have members from the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. I don't want to speak for them, but they were unanimous that they felt like, yes, this is within the confines of our public information campaign. So I wanted to share that with the council. The second piece that I think then becomes, if the council agrees with that methodology, and I'm happy to discuss any questions you may have, is then it's the priorities, right? And so that's where the Sales Tax Oversight Committee also has some good feedback, and they'll continue to have it for us as staff and the council. But it's again, we're going to talk about it in the next agenda item, so we don't need to discuss it necessarily on this item, but it's a question of, you know, what type of project and how much money are you going to spend on a project like this? Because if you get to a certain amount, you start to then affect other projects. And so for us, staff, we always looked at the $3 to $4 million number. If you could stay within those confines, we can continue in 5-year increments of $30 million every 5 years of revenue. We can attack this infrastructure and not at the expense of other projects. If you go past the $4 million mark, there's a discussion, and it's a fair discussion of priorities. And so I think what some of the, rightfully so, the Sales Tax Committee members kind of discussed was we would want to have that discussion, you know, and so we talked about financing options in that case, where then we could finance it, we could push that back to the Finance Committee and really look at solutions. Like Councilmember Kuhnhart provided some information to us tonight. So I think if we go past the $4 million mark, when you start to think about this next agenda item, we'll give you an overview on that, I think we need to talk about doing the financing and what are we comfortable doing and having that discussion. So, but really for this item right now, what I'm really looking for from the council is, are you comfortable with what I'm saying regarding the first discussion, that we've been transparent, that we've been forthcoming, and this is within what we've told the members of the community back last year. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I feel strongly that we are within that scope and range, and I think the Sales Tax Oversight Committee confirmed that this afternoon. But if you have any questions, and I apologize, I wasn't happy with how he handled the discussion at the last meeting. I could have done a better job, and so I want you all to feel comfortable with it. You know, this is a new council. When we talked about this sales tax measure back 18 months ago, you know, the council was pretty consistent with, hey, it's unrestricted. It can be used for anything, but we wanted to give priorities. You know, and I feel like on an annual basis, this covers the priorities, but there will be a time now where I argue that we need to look at the town hall, and I think within the next 5 to 7 years, we need to look at improving the firehouse. And so those are our big capital infrastructure facility projects that we're faced over the next probably 15 years. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and if I left something out, Peter, feel free.
Go ahead. Mayor Vazio, members of the council, briefly, I just wanted to say a couple things to be consistent with what you heard from Daria last time. Based on your comments, I didn't make any significant changes to the CIP that's before you tonight. There's minor modifications to the staff report. Jared Barrio is here, and again, I wanted to thank him for all the hard work he did putting together this spreadsheet and really coordinating with all the departments to get the information before you tonight. The actual item that Todd has been speaking about for the past few minutes is under the town-owned facilities page in the CIP. And I just kind of wanted to call to your attention what's in the budget before you. In the public hearing that's scheduled at the next meeting on June 18th, I believe, there'll be an action to kind of approve this CIP and budget together. And so that you're all aware of what's in there right now. And it's... Yeah. Which page is it? Let's see. My pages aren't numbered, but it's the capital program that's town-owned facilities. And that's planning and building. Keep going. Park and Rec's next one.
after environmental town-owned facilities. There it is. So if you all crane your neck to the left, you'll see the page that we're discussing now. So the Town Hall Edition, item 2.1, is looking at a total of around $3.3 million in this particular 2-year budget. If you add what at the time of drafting the CIP is a $600,000 remodel. We're going to hear from Cappy Architects in the next item. Again, we'll go into some more detail, but just so you all are aware, right now, if you're to approve this budget as it is at your next meeting, you're looking at being okay with about $3.9 million total on the new building and doing something with this existing building to make it more functional. So that's kind of what we envisioned at the time. And again, if you want to know, like, where does that rank in terms of the total expenditures for this CIP? If we are good and we're able to deliver, it's around $7 million total in 2020, and it's up to around $10 million in 2021. So in the $17 million range, you're looking at a quarter of that, or less than a quarter of that, going towards the Town Hall Edition and related amenities. So just wanted to cover that and let you know that we're happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Okay. Are there any questions from the council regarding, yes, Jim?
Okay. Okay. In terms of head count, okay, you've got how many people in your department that you're putting over in a trailer?
Right now, around 5 to 6, yeah.
Okay, 6. And down in Adams area, how many?
I don't know if we need to go through all the programming now. I think Adam has around 9 staff members. We have some temporary workstations for people who do things like inspections and field work.
Okay.
We're working with the architect now. He has all of our needs, all of our staffing needs,
Right.
the number of bathrooms we need, the number of, all the stuff is in the program.
Okay, and we can go through that in the next section.
Yeah, it might be more appropriate to talk about that in the next item in terms of, how big does the building need to be? Where should everybody sit? How big does the public counter need to be? We are looking for some direction from you all on that.
I was envisioning we would do that in the next item.
Okay.
We're just talking about the capital improvement budget structure.
All right.
Yeah.
So any questions or?
I have a question, please, Mr. Mayor. When we're looking at taking care of the next segment of the sewerage system, or the next segment of our communication system, or the next park project, those are such small bites that it makes absolutely no sense to take out a bond, right? When we did when Central Marin Police Authority did the new police headquarters, it was a $20 million bond, and that went out for the public, and it was a general obligation bond. It was authorized, voted. We spent 10% less than the $20 million allotted, but that's for a big, long-lasting asset, right? Are any of the other pieces of this CIP, let's say, susceptible to putting in a singular bond funding for the long haul, or are they really much more appropriately dealt in the fashion that we seem to be dealing with them, sort of in bits and pieces? I'm not suggesting that your plan is in bits and pieces, but we're doing these smaller projects, one after the other, in order to accomplish the priorities that we all have, right? So you see what I'm asking? There's a differentiation between, let's say, taking out a mortgage for a building and doing annual contributions towards the big small sections of the big plan of infrastructure improvements, right?
There are, and I know Todd might have a comment on this in his experience here for the last 20 some odd years in Corte Madera and Larkspur. But what I will say about the way this is set up, we're pretty confident that the size and the type of projects that we're looking at, the funding streams we have with the renewal of Measure F, with the sunsetting of the parcel tax for flood control, this is lining up pretty well with our needs. The one that's kind of different and that kind of drives the flood control is that outstanding one is, do we build a tidal levee? Are we going to do something significant in the Corte Madera marsh? That we have a placeholder in there for $15 million.
Right.
That's a big cost that probably wouldn't be borne all by the town. There'd be some kind of funding or bonding or public-private partnership.
Yeah.
That's the one that kind of speaks to what you're talking about in my mind. Did you want to add anything to that, Todd?
I think we want to be as flexible and mobile when we get to that stage, and the Vice Mayor talks about it all the time. You know, when we look at what we did with the shopping center, we can't call those bonds back right now. Well, actually, there's a huge penalty for that, and so we don't want to handcuff future leaders in the Corte Madera when we get to that decision-making point. And so we feel like it's a very large revenue stream. We feel like we have a lot of opportunities, and if we don't have to, we don't want to borrow now. We want to stay mobile.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Any other questions? Eli? No, sir. No? Okay. And again, we discussed this a lot 2 weeks ago in our meeting, but now it's time for public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to talk about or this particular item? Okay, hearing none, then I will bring it back to the council for direction.
Before you close public comment?
Yes.
Did I misunderstand? Or did I hear that the august members of our tax oversight committee were gonna present? Do you have anything you wanted to offer, or not so much?
Well, since I'm august.
By popular
So Karen Gerbosi, 111 Parkview Circle, Chair of the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. I just wanted to say that Todd represented the committee accurately. We did discuss it a little bit. There was, people, went through the process, which is some of what happened a couple weeks ago with you about looking, are we being consistent with what we put forward in Measure F? Is this consistent with what the residents voted for? And we're all comfortable with it's consistent, it's suitable, that the facility being funded in however you choose to do it with sales tax revenues. I think is that what you're consistent with what you just said?
Yeah.
And I told Jean before I got up, I said, if I say anything that's inconsistent, I'm welcoming you to come up and say, don't listen to Karen. So here she is.
I'm not going to contradict you. I'm just going to have that second step that I think what has caused the discomfiture is that we weren't really talking about this building back when we were passing the sales tax. And one of the provisions of this sales tax was for, long delayed projects because of the recession and other fiscal problems that the town had. So to throw in a large project that wasn't really on the horizon when we have all this backlog of other important projects, I think is what we're struggling with. In principle, the building is part of the infrastructure, but it is about the priorities and whether $4 million should be going in 2 years. I don't know that answer right now. But I think that's what created some of the problems, in my mind at least, that all of a sudden, all these other projects are going to be sidelined. And I've been assured that that's really not foreseen or that's not the case. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Jim Robinson, Ash Avenue. I don't know if this is appropriate for B or C, but having to do with the funding of this capital improvement that may be a new facility in the future, which I support. I supported Measure F. I don't know that I would have included language in Measure F that a new town hall. I think that might have been a deal killer for some people, but just knowing the community at large. But I do realize that Measure F is unrestricted, so it could be used for any purpose. My question would be, I had read that there was like $1.5 million of additional sales tax revenue, not Measure F, but a general fund sales tax revenue that mysteriously became aware of or became available to us. Is this something that could be used for funding the future town hall? And the reason why I mention that is that I would be opposed to bonding this thing. I hope we could pay for this thing through the funds that we have. I also would encourage the town to build something first class. You can see what's happened with our adjoining community with their library project is now 10 years in the planning stage. I think what we might do this year versus 10 years from now, it's something we need to do. I hope that we could do something that would be within our limited budget that we have and the sales tax is available to us to support that project.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public want to talk about the capital improvement budget? I will bring it back to the council. Again, we are not voting on this. There's no action. We are providing direction to staff. Anybody would like to provide direction? Sloan would like to provide direction.
So similar to last item, I'm totally good with it in all respects. I think it was smart to go to the Citizens Tax Advisory Committee. I'm sorry, my voice is a little hoarse. Jean and Karen, thank you so much, both for the work you do, and I apologize for putting you both on the spot tonight, but it was meaningful to me to hear what you had to say, and I'm good with all of it. And thank you, Jim. Your comments are always good. That's it.
Anybody else?
I'm grateful to have the staff that we have.
Okay, and I just want to echo what I said about Daria. I didn't get a chance to say it last week, but just thank you. This is a great, thorough budget, Jared. Thank you. It's really great to have you guys doing this and have this much detail and have it this well thought out and this laid out. So just thank you again for all the work and the forethought on it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And I don't think we have any further direction. And again, we talked about this a lot 2 weeks ago. So we're going to continue moving on to, I gotta get back to my agenda page, 6C. Review and provide direction to staff regarding Town Hall Complex Addition project update and selection of preferred alternative. And again, we are not voting on anything tonight, we are providing direction. So, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I think Todd and I might have a few introductory remarks, and then we're going to turn it over to our very capable architect, Mr. Ron Cappy. Just by way of a little background information, 3 cooks in the kitchen on this staff report. Todd, Jared, and I all kind of put our signature on this. We attempted to kind of break down a couple things. First of all, where are we right now, right? So this is an update. We got Cappy Architects on board, I think it was December of last year, for around $300,000 for complete design of this building. And he's got a great team that is ready to do everything it takes to build a new building, electrical, structural, all of those things. That's been mostly on hold for the last 6 months. And the primary reason is because we needed to have this community discussion. We needed to get a working group together. Councilmember Beckman and Vice Mayor Andrews participated in that working group. We met 3 times. We had some local architects. We had members of staff. Adam Wolf, the planning and building director, as well as a building official, were on that committee. And we spent some time really delving into the issues and asking the questions. Should we build a new town hall? Why do we need it? Can we do it at Corte Madera Center? Should we do it in Town Park? Should we do it here on this? We asked all those questions, and there's an attachment. The working group summary report, I think, is an attachment to this staff report that goes into all of those things, and that serves as the project update. The second thing that your town manager asked us to do is get some feedback from the community. So Jared and Ron put together some community workshops, and we invited folks to come. I think the Saturday workshop was a little better attended than the Monday night one, but we still got great feedback from everyone who attended, and that has kind of twisted us and shaped us and pushed us to think about things that we weren't thinking about on our own. So I just wanted to say that the process thus far, the kind of slowing down, having the working group, asking the community the questions, has been helpful to us to really hone in on what the next steps are. And so the last thing I'll say before I turn over to Todd for any other comments is Mr. Cappy and his team have put together a slideshow that kind of go into some of those details. And what architects do best, they show you what things might look like. And I'll let Ron talk a little bit about some of those options. And we tried this afternoon to align the options you're going to see from Mr. Cappy with what you see in the staff report. So we're kind of looking for your direction at the end of this is option 1 sound good to you? Does option 2, does option 3 sound good? So that's one of the goals is to get some marching orders on what kind of building, what kind of budget, those type of things. It'd be great to get your feedback on that tonight. Okay, so without any further babbling, Mr. Cappy, would you like to come up and kind of walk us through your version of it? And again, Jared's very good at sitting there and being silent, but he's our project manager. He's a structural engineer. I just wanted to tout some of his background. He spent the last 10 years designing buildings, of all types, hospitals, schools, commercial buildings. He's got a wealth of information and knowledge as a structural engineer and a PE. So we're lucky to have him on the staff, and he and Ron have been working really well together. And so those are your leaders of this team. And so without that, I'll take it over. Ron, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Honorable Mayor and members of the Town Council, my name is Ron Cappy. I'm with Cappy Architects. My office is in San Rafael. I've had the pleasure of working with the community and civic leaders for the last 4 or 5 months in these series of meetings that Peter was talking about. The original assignment was to do a town hall addition adjacent to the existing town hall, looking for a new building of approximately 4,500 square feet. The current building that we're in right now, you see 5,288 feet, and the staff is about 24 FTE with some part-time and seasonal workers. The project goals were to talk about the identity of the town. You know, can you do a building that emphasizes or represents what the town is about? Service was a key goal. Can the town provide better service to the community, the public service counter, through a redesign effort? Efficiency of getting all the staff in one place. Parking improvements, of course, access, ADA, and sustainable design are also in the original goals. So we had the Town Hall Addition Working Group. We had 3 meetings and far-ranging discussion. I've been doing a lot of listening to everybody that's come to these meetings, and certain themes have really come out. One theme that came out right away was the need to master plan, which I'll go into in a few minutes. Fiscal constraints have always been a part of this project. I was just over here talking about it in the previous item. The general plan goals, actually in 2009, mention the town hall addition. So that's been in the general plan for a while. We did site studies looking at various possible sites through the master plan process. Location A is the location that we're going to be really focusing on tonight, but we also looked at another site very extensively at the corner of Pixley and Tamalpais. We ended up looking at pros and cons for each site, and those are in the staff report attachment 1, if you want to take a look at that, and the report of findings, which is the staff report attachment 1. The working group came up with some additional ideas. The idea of adding administrative and finance offices to the new building, the idea of enlarging the council chambers in the existing location, the idea of a new council chambers in the new building. Public spaces were discussed, indoor and outdoor gathering and conferencing areas, and the redwoods, preserving the trees along Tamalpais Drive as an asset that the town has, and something that is representative of the town as well. So this was the scope of the master planning on the extended site plan. And we kind of went through each of these different possible sites. You know, Park Madera Shopping Center, the the community center parking lot, was that an area for possible expansion? You see the Pixley Tamalpais site was called Park Site B. And then in orange is the Site A. We discussed what's happening with the post office, what's happening with the town workforce housing. So we tried to take a broad view for starters. Then it brought back to the preferred location, which is next door to where we're standing right now. The town hall is the great square in the lower corner there. The parking that is shown here is just really conceptual, but the idea is there will be more parking. We looked at the backyard of the workforce housing property as possible parking expansion area. So then we took the findings from the working group and went to the community workshop over at the community center. And we looked at several ideas for location A, building massing concepts of different sizes based on what we've been discussing. Both meetings featured really fairly detailed group discussions, and those notes are also in your packet. Questionnaires were filled out, and the reoccurring themes were council chambers was discussed a lot, asking for something larger and more spacious, and or asking for new council chambers. The existing building mostly got negative comments. This building here got a series of negative comments, anything from tear it down to can you really remodel this? Civic identity was discussed a lot. What is the town of Corte Madera? Eco-friendly type of ideas were discussed quite a bit as well. Kind of the civic identity and eco-friendly ideas sort of dovetailed back and forth in discussion. Parking concerns came up, and budget and construction cost concerns were also discussed. So option 3 in the staff report starts like this. So we're looking at the town hall over on the left-hand side without any changes with this council chambers similar. We're looking at a 4,500 square foot building. You see that we have an ADA ramp, we have some stairs, we have a new entry point. We're showing possibility of coming into the council chambers off of a plaza from the side here. This is the back side of it, so you see the excerpt of what you just looked at in the bottom corner, highlighting a few of these ideas. So this is close to what we originally commissioned to do. The existing town hall, and then adding a public counter off of the parking lot, and offices up above. That's what you're looking at here. We also, with the parking, we're looking at electric vehicle parking. One thing that this scheme does not solve is the vertical circulation. By having 2 separate buildings, they can't share an elevator. So the elevator's in the new building, but we don't have access really in this building. So option 2 in the staff report. So the idea here is now you're looking at the town hall with what we're showing is the full build out. I think the idea that's discussed in the staff report is a 2-phase process where first you leave this building alone, but could you put a new roof on it? Could you, raise the roof literally? We're showing a living wall as an idea of something that represents the town. There's already some kind of foliage going on this building as well, but it'll be something more robust. We're looking at a central entry point, which is beyond the redwood trees. I should point out on the previous scheme, all 3 redwood trees remained. In this scheme, 2 out of 3. Excuse me. So then you're looking on the right-hand side at offices, and downstairs, we still have the public counter downstairs, but you have now a shared elevator through this corridor that is an entry point and can then be used by both this existing building and the new building. This concept shows a roof form. It's just the beginning of talking about, an actual building. The roof form could look differently. The idea is that it's a unifying theme here, and it's something that improves this building as well. So the third and final scheme that we want to show is called option 1 in the staff report. And this is the idea of moving the town council to a 3rd floor in a new building. And so some of the discussion that we heard in the community meetings was about a larger space, a grander space, something that would be more fitting of a civic building. Offices are shown below. The existing building that we're standing in right now could become conference rooms and expand the ability of the staff to function. Looking at it on the other side, there's a parking lot side. We're still having public counter at that level, offices above, and then the town council up on top. We had a concern, sometimes you see we were showing glass railings. In this case, we're showing a solid railing where you don't want to have, if we did have windows or something like that in the council chambers, you wouldn't want a lot of light to be leaking into the neighborhood. So different ways of blocking that and yet allowing natural light in, whether it's skylights or clear story windows. I hit the wrong button. Okay, so then to conclude, what we're really here to ask is your opinion and your thoughts, just like I've been talking to a lot of town members over these months. Which approach seems to, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks. Which approach seems to meet your needs for current and future? Because as it talks about in the staff report, decision for what gets built here is something that you're going to live with for quite a while. It happens I work with a lot of cities, a lot of towns, and it is your shot at a civic building that needs to be looking into the future as well. What are the key priorities that you see? We listed a lot, we found out a lot over these last few months. What do you think are the most important priorities? And then in these design concepts that we showed, it could be a mix and match kind of idea, things that you like, things that could be combined into something that works with the budget that we have now, a budget that could be determined if you decide to expand. So we're looking for council direction and guidance. Personally, my recommendation is option 2, fully built out, which we could go back and look at and talk about, but that's where we would try to improve this building, connect it to a new building, and deal with the vertical circulation as well. I do think you need modified or new council chambers, and this is backed up by a lot of comments that I heard throughout these last few months. And with that, I'll open it up to discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So first off, let's have questions from the council. Who would like to? Jim has one.
Among the 3 different options, what is the difference in footprint size of the various buildings? And I'm thinking also with bigger footprint, fewer parking spaces.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first one I showed you, the smaller one was 4,500 square feet new building. Okay. The next one was about 6,000 square feet. And then the next one with the town council chambers is about 9,000 square feet.
Well, that's square footage, but I'm thinking in terms of footprint size, that if you go up a floor, you can have a smaller footprint, but is that wrong?
We showed you a slightly enlarged, the footprints are close. If you're looking at it from an aerial view, just looking down, we're somewhat limited and constrained by how much room we have here. So you notice that the third scheme was kind of sort of more vertical looking, so that footprint didn't expand too much more, but that would be the largest footprint.
Okay.
I just had a quick question. You said you recommend option 2. Can you talk about why that is?
Can you put it on the screen too?
Yep.
Yeah.
Roll it back.
Sure.
I'd love to hear more about why the architect prefers option 2.
I agree, Bob. That's an important question.
Well, one thing that's important in every discussion I've heard for months now is budget. So it's kind of how can you get the best bang for what you are able to spend. So there was a lot of there was some discussion about, oh, should this building be torn down? Well, we're not saying that that was a more radical approach. But can this be improved? So the idea is try to give you an image of what could happen here. We thought it improved a lot to, get rid of the arch, put in some a living wall or something like that kind of emphasizes more of a landscape approach. We're showing you one roof form, and I thought that when it ties together with the new roof form, that it, makes this building renewed, let's put it that way. So that was a concern. The other thing I like about it is that we solved the vertical circulation problem for both buildings by having an elevator. We like the central entrance point. You can go one way, you can go the other way. And then, we have always had about 3,000 square feet dedicated to the public counter, which is much bigger than what you have downstairs right now. And so each scheme had that improvement, and then each scheme has the offices in it as well. The idea of bringing finance and admin over, along with public works, building and planning, seems to be a good idea to me, and it could happen in this concept.
The only thing I'll add to that, Mr. Mayor, is with option 2, it really also focuses on expanding and modernizing the council chamber in its existing location. And so if the finance and admin folks that are on the other side of this wall, if they're moved to the new building, then we have a lot more room to work with in terms of updating and modernizing the council chambers in the existing location. I think the other thing that Ron was getting at with option 2 is it achieves all the objectives. The one benefit it may have over the staff recommendation in your report is it's a less massing in the building, so you're not dealing with as big of a building in the new construction site, so it's a little more contained. So those are some other points I think that stood out for 2.
And one concern when we started showing, we showed this council chamber enlarged into this new area, and there was a concern about, but what happens if you keep this roof the same? It feels like, it's not going to feel right. You need to get more spacious if you're going to get taller. So that's what we're trying to show there as a build-out idea.
Okay. Questions? Yes, David.
The program here is to think about a taller space, not a third floor occupied in this building.
Correct.
Okay. But
we haven't done a structural analysis of foundation, but that might be prohibitive to go up.
in this building.
Yeah.
But you could move this floor up 2 feet so that the basement would be more spacious. And this space would be more spacious, but as long as you have an open roof.
I think probably it's more cost effective to dig down if you're, I know it's substandard space downstairs.
Okay.
But yeah, so then the idea would be, we did a quick look structurally up here, if you could add a new roof, that seemed possible.
Other questions?
One other question.
So, by the way, it would be an open, we're looking at, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's an open ceiling, so you'd have some, some kind of beams that are showing and some kind of design that would represent the town.
In option 3, are we somehow constrained and required to have it be more square footage? Going from the 6,000 to 9,000 square foot, or is that just a consequence of having a discrete third floor set of new space up there?
Well, one thought I had about this is that we got the town, the chambers up on the top floor.
Yeah.
And then we've got the public counter on the bottom floor adjacent to the parking lot. And then if you do move the town chambers into a new building, what happens to the existing building that we're standing in right now? So we've had two thoughts. One is conference rooms that become adjunct to the new building, so you don't have to build those into the new building. The other thought was that could the public counter move into that to this whole upper floor? So these are some options. In which case, if you do that, then this building to the right doesn't have to be quite as tall. So that's the kind of discussion that we're looking for as we really would move forward to a schematic design. But programmatically, the public counter is about 3,000 square feet, and programmatically, the expansion of this council chamber was about the same.
Okay. I had a question. Are solar panels an option on this?
Solar panels are an option.
They are not.
Either
Couldn't
you,
put them in, but we could do that later as part of the,
yeah, I mean, we've already had some conversations about net zero, with net zero people, and trying to make this, environmentally sustainable as possible.
so this would be like state-of-the-art, environmental, world-class, an example for Marin County.
Well, it could be. I mean, we've used solar panels in that way, where you actually display the fact that you're doing them. You can either be discreet and hide them, or you can make it more of a point of showing that that's what you're doing.
Okay. Questions, more? Yes.
Thanks. So it looks from the staff report like the architect is recommending, so there's sort of the minimum, the medium, and the maximum options here. The architect is recommending the medium, and it looks like staff is recommending what I would call the maximum. So I see one of the differences between those two is that the maximum includes interior remodel of the existing town hall, and the medium does not, right? The medium defers that for later. So I'm wondering, what if we split the difference and said that we're going to build the maximum but defer renovating the existing building until, further down the road? What kind of price point does that put us at then?
Well, I think we've talked about a $6 million price point for this option.
Yeah, and that's another thing, that's an astute observation from Councilmember Beckman. What I would say about option 2, as outlined by Mr. Cappy and his team, is it does speak to a more significant remodel than what's before you in your staff report. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, while all the objectives could likely be achieved with option 2 that's before you in terms of the architectural schematic, Ron's put it up now, that is kind of a higher budget item than what's in the staff report. Again, it's a $3.9 million total project in your CIP right now. If you want to get, at least in our opinion, if you want to get the most bang for your buck and you believe, as staff does, that this is your one chance to get something right for the next number of decades, it may be worthwhile to look at that $5 to $6 million range and, give the direction to the staff and the architecture team. Go back, use the working group maybe a couple more times and begin to work out the designs of how you achieve all your objectives in a little more detail.
Okay. I'll pick back up more on that when we're doing comments.
Okay. Any more questions from the council?
How good are your cost estimates?
Mac 5 is our cost estimator. They have estimated a lot of buildings and other kind of improvements around Marin County. So we have confidence in them.
Okay.
Any other questions from the council?
But actually, we have not started doing any formal cost estimating. These have been just some general numbers being thrown around right now. I haven't really activated them yet.
So if we could find ourselves in a situation where we wanted to go for option 3, we looked at the budget and we'd have to settle for option 2, or vice versa.
It could be something like that, or you get into phasing, some kind of phasing plan, which is happening a lot with different cities and towns all around.
Any other questions from council? No? Okay, then we're going to open it up for public comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And he'll be available to answer the questions afterwards. So let's go with public comment here. You can please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Sure. That would be helpful. If you can provide your name, that would be great too. Thank you so much.
Hi, Karen Gerbosi, 111 Parkview Circle, in Corte Madera. The question that I have that I haven't quite heard is that I'm interested in, it's like if we do whatever we do, and 15 years down the line, are we going to have a structure where we could add a floor? Is it going to be expandable? Because, if you drive down the streets, you see all these post-war houses where people are all of a sudden putting a second story on. So that's what I'm looking at. We can think about everything that we can think about from here. And as we said, state of the art from whenever it is, but the very next day, it's no longer going to be state of the art. And you're then going to start dealing with what are we going to need for the future. I know that our city is never going to get a lot larger because the city is pretty much built out. But at the same time, there are capacities that I think that would have some wisdom to consider what could we accommodate that we can't foresee right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to comment?
Jim Robinson, Ash Avenue, Corte Madera. I want to thank for the staff and the town for providing the workshop. I always think better on a Saturday morning, so I appreciate that. I think it was attended by 3 of our council members, so I won't provide all my comments. I guess my primary concern is I want to make sure that this is a priority for the town of Corte Madera. We won't have an opportunity to spend another $5 or $6 million on another project like this probably in the future. And I would hope that if we do build it, it will be a first-class structure. I would hope that you would provide some flexibility in the design of the building, because 10 or 20 years from now, we'll have different staff, have different council, and everyone will be wondering what was in our mind when we built this building. And it's just human nature. It's going to happen. I've seen it happen in a number of other communities. So I hope there'd be some flexibility associated with it. There are 2 comments that came out of the meeting that didn't get mentioned tonight. One, and I don't concur with this, but the issue of, we already have a council chambers, why do we need a new one? We can always march down to our rec center to do that. And I've found that's kind of awkward and difficult. We always forget something when you go down that building. It's kind of cavernous. I don't know that really sound is the best quality in there, so I think it's a good idea to have a council chambers as part of this. It was mentioned it was on the 2nd floor. I assume the access is by elevator, and the access is not facing Tamalpais, which you always know is noisy whenever we open a door at one of these meetings. It's in the back there. And I guess my other concern is that it was mentioned by someone who lived across the street here that mentioned she was very concerned about, I don't know if it's this height of this plan you have before you tonight, but she was very concerned about a 2nd story and the effect it might have on her home across the street. So that might be something else you might want to consider. The other thing is, I know we live in the digital age, and I mentioned this last meeting, but I don't know if staff will appreciate this comment, but we used to be open 45 hours a week. We're now open 22 hours a week. So if we're going to have a new city hall, I hope that we'd be flexible in providing hours to our public so we have access to the building. And again, I temper that with the fact that a lot of things are being done down digitally, so we don't need to see each other face to face or in a building type structure. So that might be something you might consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson, former town manager. Astute observations always. Anybody else wish to comment on this particular item? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we will bring it back to the council. And the council is going to provide direction, comments, discussion. David, you look like you want to...
I do. Rebecca, you're counting something. Would you be willing to put that up? Would you indulge me and allow me to run through a quick short set back up to the top show? I just pulled some different... Sure. I'm going to do this very, very, very quickly. There are so many places where civic pride is rendered. This happens to be Hamburg, Germany, where a great-great-great-great-grandfather of mine was Bürgermeister or mayor. He was in your seat there. That's not what I'm going to suggest for here, but there are places in the world that really celebrate public service. This is a classic New England Greek democracy town hall in Sturbridge. Here's Santa Clara. Actually, this is Santa Clara, Arizona. But notice the similarities and things in common. What's that? The Novato City Hall, former meeting house, church, and the new building beside it. Inside, it's just very spacious and wonderful. That looks good. Wonderful, tall space. But notice what each one of these things has in common. That's Mill Valley's City Hall. Again, grand historic space inside. This is St. Helena. This is the high school, which I put up here because the town council or the city council in St. Helena has a city hall. It's a one-story, uninspiring building. So they go and meet in that building because they like to have the public in a public space that is more exciting and roaring. Now, I'm not going to take us back to Philadelphia, but that was built at a time when Philadelphia wasn't a whole lot bigger than Marin County. And we do have civic identity here in town. We have civic identity, and it's in town center. It's our commercial center. It's not our civic center. And so my particular discussion
Boston
points.
City Hall.
Excuse me?
Where's Boston City Hall? We
Oh,
got-
Boston City Hall is the worst. If you take an average penny and turn it on the backside and flip it upside down, that's the look of the Boston City Hall. So go ahead, dig in. To me, I really celebrate that our architect that we've hired really did listen a lot and listen to conversations, and I attended both of those workshops, about civic identity. What is our identity? And to me, the thing that defines Corte Madera better than anything is volunteerism. And I look at, it's not just that we're building a city hall or a council chambers, but rather a volunteer chamber, right? This is where Bike and Ped Commission meets, Air Council meets. This is where the Citizens Review Committees meet. It's where all the different volunteer committees meet. So we're creating a space not just for the council, but for everybody in town. And I completely agree that we got to accommodate all foreseeable staff and program requirements. It's got to be flexible. I'm not sure that it makes sense to try to build a building 2 stories tall that could be 3 stories later. You'd have to build all of the foundation as strong as it would need to be and seismically capable for a 3-story building. So you'd have to know the third story design, right, Jared? You'd have to design all 3. Thank you. And the other thing that I began to discuss earlier is that if we're going to add a new building, right? To me, that's something that should be financed over 20, 30, 40 years. It won't be 40 years, but the life of a mortgage. And there are ways to do that without going into the extra cost and overhead of a bond offering. But I sure would like to see us create a sense of identity as we do this project, and as we're prudent at the same time. And I think we can be. And that's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Can I jump in there?
Eli.
David raised something that I think touches on what I think is one of the most important little passages in this staff report, which talks about the fact that additional, sort of the financing ramifications of whatever we choose to do will be, or I guess the financing ramifications of these 3 options will be brought to us. So I think that is really kind of going to be critical in making the right decision here, because we obviously have something budgeted for, which is, I think, closest to, we said 3.9 million is in our capital improvement budget. So we've got, one that is in the 2 to 5 to 3 range. We've got one here in the 4 to 4.5 range. So I think if we're going to go above and beyond that, it's critical for us to have sort of a comprehensive understanding of how those costs might be sort of defrayed or spread out over time, and what sort of, I think handcuffs is a strong word, but just sort of what does that mean for how the town can operate in the future, and what restraints is that going to put on us? So I certainly look forward to seeing that information provided for review. I think that's going to be, critical in our decision-making process. I agree with David wholeheartedly that it's important that this be an inspiring building. I think a lot of us feel that the current town hall maybe doesn't quite inspire or celebrate, the town of Corte Madera the way we might hope. But also, this is Corte Madera and not Dubai or Philadelphia or something. So for me, the money is going to be an important factor, and I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about that.
Thank you. We're
you.
not even Novato, actually.
Right.
Any other comment? I just wanted to pick up on something you just said, and then I'll flip it over to you. When I ran for town council originally, one of the reasons was the town had purchased the Park Madera Center. And when they did that, the town took on a huge amount of debt. They basically mortgaged everything we had, and it created issues for the town for years. And I am not excited about the town taking on more debt in general. I think that's just...
That debt wasn't measured according to the income and the net income of that property. There was no appraisal done. It was not
Actually,
done
there
right.
was an appraisal done, and that's why they had to take on the debt, because they couldn't finance it with what they had. So I am not interested in the town taking on more debt. I just want to throw that out there and lay out that that's kind of my perspective on things. So I just wanted to pick up on you, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, further comments? Yes, sorry.
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go ahead.
I don't care. Okay, so I agree that we can only do what we can afford. It's a smart comment, Eli. I don't think any of us would disagree with that, but we can only do what we can do. I agree strongly we should make it as sustainable and environmentally friendly as we can. We lead a little bit, hopefully more than a little bit in the community that way, so we ought to have solar panels and a green wall and recyclable this and, whatever we ought to, you know what I'm talking about, the, yeah. I'm sort of making light of it, but I mean it in a genuine way, is that I think it's incumbent on us to do the right thing there, even if it costs a little extra, because we send a message to what's important to us, and it's clear to me, to everyone in our town, it's important to us. So the other comments I had was that, and they're called out, is that of course we need to be thinking generational here. And one of those things is, I don't know how to express this properly. I think we ought to be sensitive to the fact that the building should be engineered to be able to withstand catastrophes. I don't know if you do that at this stage. The architect could tell me. Maybe you figure that out when you've got the aesthetic part squared away to how to build it so it's strong. But Peter or Todd or whoever figures these things out, I'd like it to be super duper or over-engineered so that in the event of a true town catastrophe, we'd have a place where we can continue to run services and help our people. I don't know, is at this stage, or is it too early to talk about that stuff? It probably affects the cost. Okay. It's important to me, I'm glad people have called out the idea of a common area, a central gathering space, sort of a unified entrance. Those sorts of central themes are significant to me. We've got a couple of people on the council who know what they're doing about planning and architecture, so I'm a little out of my depth there, but I do think the aesthetics are more important in this kind of structure than in almost any others that we do. They send a message, so I hope that whatever you finally end up with, it's with an eye towards something that we can be proud of. That's all. I guess the only specific ones were, please make it as sustainable as you possibly can. Please think about making it I think our community center was seismically retrofitted 8 or 10 years ago, and that's the only building I know of that's super duper in our town. Is that right? Maybe the fire station? I don't know.
Yeah, so the building, the community center isn't, the police department.
Wasn't it seismically retrofitted? Am I imagining that?
No.
No?
We did some improvements to it, but it's not.
Well, all right. I'd like to have one building, Todd, if we could manage it, Well, I think that would be worth something, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jim, did you have something you wanted?
Yeah, I like the option 3 and option 2. I suspect when we start fully costing out option 3, we're going to end up being able to pay for option 2. So, one thing in terms of planning, if we're going to be putting in solar panels, we're going to have to start thinking about battery backups, because if PG&E does what they're promising to do, we can either do solar with battery backups, or we're going to put in a big natural gas-fired generator so that the facility can keep working in town. In terms of costs, some sort of financing might be doable, but I want us to be able to pay it off sooner rather than later, because Bob mentioned the debt. We can't really pay off the Park Madera debt until 2037, which means everything is sort of encumbered until then. And so, that has severely constrained what the town can do with its property over the next generation. And I'm hesitant to do anything else with this, in terms of borrowing to pay for this, so.
And if I can just pick up on something that was said in the public comment earlier, about paying for this out of the CIP budget, we can't, and they were concerned that it would take money away from other projects in the CIP budget, but my understanding is if we don't do something like this, we're not going to have a place for staff to work, to execute, and create all the projects in the CIP budget. I mean, we need people working, and they need to have office space, they need to have computers, they need to have functionality in order to actually do that. So I think we need to do this if we want to actually execute all the items that we have in the CIP budget, because it's the only way staff's going to be able to do it, right? Yeah.
One thing that, this conversation has really been what we've been talking about the last 5 months of, it really comes to budget. And one option, I think, what would be helpful is some direction from council, and we think we're hearing it, but to meet the needs of and concerns of all the council members, I think something, and I'll tell you, I'm really comfortable with a $4 million budget of not pushing at the cost of any other CIP projects over the next 5 years. It's a really good, healthy number that allows us flexibility. The question then is, would we keep, bump up our budget to $4 million over the next 2 years? And then whatever project we end up going with, of looking at just different financing types of options, like the Vice Mayor said, of the ability, though, to pay that early if we need to, because we know we're going to have that funding stream. We have $34 million over the next 5 years. So, but it allows us flexibility, and if you start financing $2 or $3 million, that's a whole different discussion. It allows us flexibility where we're not incurring this huge debt over a long period of time. So, but it would help us then to start doing those scenarios. We were going to try to do that for you today, and we have some basic numbers that you could hear tonight, but it really depends on how you want us to put that together. So
I'm good with that, and because there's another recession coming, and it's going to hurt. I know we have planned for it, and we've done a lot of things in the budget, but it is going to hurt us worse than most towns in Marin County, and, it's going to make all this harder. So we just need to be thinking about that kind of stuff.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add a couple things, in terms of ballpark numbers, if you look at current interest rates in a $6 million loan, if we did that over 25 years, that's around $33,000 a month. It's around $400,000 a year. That's the kind of, we have a $7 million budget right now of unspent money in Measure F. So in my mind, $400,000 is palatable. The other thing to think about, and just to kind of capture the direction we're hearing from you, at least in the bullet points that I've heard so far, is look at options 2 or 3. Sounds like those are both have some viability. You're looking to really engage our cost estimator, which we haven't done to date. So we can engage a cost estimator and start to really hammer out the numbers, and then just based on what your town manager said, come up with some financing scenarios. Are we looking at a chunk of it now? Are we looking at financing a small amount of it? What are those tables and costs? And we can bring that information back to you.
I don't know if the council, though, is on options 2 or 3, though. I've heard options 2 or 3, but it would be helpful to focus on maybe 2, narrow it down a little bit for us, but obviously to have options for you would be helpful. And if you can't, then I guess we can certainly bring back all 3, but it would help.
Well, I didn't specifically speak, and I would love to have a short opportunity to speak on that particular point. I think the failure of one's been identified, that it's 2 separate buildings. It doesn't unify the staff. It doesn't help us. Keeping it, so either 2 or 3 to me works. But I think the thrust of my little slideshow is to say, why not take a look at how good we can be? Let's see if we can make that work within a reasonable budget and not just sub-optimize instantly from the beginning. So I think if it is the staff recommendation that we look at 3 and explore it and test it and see if we can make it work.
I keep getting confused because 1 and 3 are switched in the presentation.
I know.
We tried to label them as option 1. Yeah. So
you're talking about the 2 bigger ones.
Rebecca, could you?
Yes, I am.
Remind everyone.
And 3 is in the slideshow. It's 3 in the slideshow.
So you're talking about what are option 1 and 2 in the staff report.
Is option 3.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, not ideal.
We all like the 2 bigger ones.
Yeah.
We all like the 2 bigger ones.
Okay. That's an easier way to talk about it.
So we lose that one. Okay. 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 That's the middle cost.
And I'm saying, let's see if we can see how good we can be. Concept scheme 3, choice 1.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. I think we have some marching orders.
So then, just to clarify, it's what in the staff report is option 1 and option 2.
Correct.
Is working with those two concepts and
Correct.
trying to figure out what we can do to make those work and how we would pay for either one of those and finance those over time and working out. Okay. Is that accurate then? Yep. Okay. Everybody's good with that? Need good direction? Okay. Thank you for that. And back to the agenda, it is time for town manager report and council reports. Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple quick updates. Our Parks and Rec Director provided the following update. On May 23rd, the Park and Rec Department held its annual senior fair. 38 vendors attended and gave great information to the community on things from hearing aids to social groups, from service animals to senior housing. Over 175 people attended. They had a great time. They had live music and received some really good feedback. So I'm really happy about that. Our previous retired town manager brought up the parking issue from the school. That's been caused by Redwood High School. It is an ongoing issue. It's one that I don't think it's on the top priority list of Redwood High School. Something that Jim Robinson brought up that was helpful of really looking at, can we free up any spaces, 25, 30, 40 spaces, and reduce parking in our neighborhoods by 30%. So we're going to push that hard at the staff level. Both the Larkspur City Manager and I have been meeting with the superintendent and the principal at Redwood High School, and we'll continue that over the summer. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to hold a community meeting. It'll be joint between Corte Madera and Larkspur, and we're going to look at a certain radius around the school, because anything we do, we're going to push cars to other locations. And so we're looking at a residential permit program. It'll be something that would be, like, for instance, a lifetime kind of permit, parking permit, and we'll restrict it by hours. We don't have to put signs all over the neighborhood. We just have to put it at the ingress, egress points. And so that is going to be our staff recommendation, that we'll get the feedback from the community, get their update, we'll get their recommendations, and then we'll bring it to council over the summer. So we're prepared going into the school year that we have an ordinance that's joint with Larkspur in place, and we can do the community education and also educate the parents through the school going into the school year. It's something that we can add or take back as we go. It's just something we're going to have to monitor. We're going to use Central Marin Police Authority cadets and our code enforcement officer to handle that. And so it's just one, it's been frustrating for our residents, especially through there. One of the concerns that really concerns all of us is, the campus is closed at lunch. And so when someone parks in our residential area, it's tucked way back in there. And so they're already 10 minutes late getting to their car, and they only have so much time for lunch to get back. And we've had a lot of close calls. So we're monitoring it. The Public Works Director and the Chief of Police are involved. We're also going to try to do some red curbing, but we want feedback from the community before we do that on line of sight issues. So it's an absolute priority for us. We think we can solve this during the summertime while school's out. So we're on it.
Thank you. Town council reports.
You're looking at me. Shall we go this way?
Yeah.
Okay. The Transportation Authority of Marin has put out its budget for the coming year for public comment. Yes, Jim, you're right. There's a whole lot of homework involved. But Peter Brown, I'm wondering if you got word. They said that they have made clear to each Department of Public Works what funds are available from Transportation Authority of Marin, and also that under Measure A, advancement of funds for any significant transportation project of up to 3 years is available from them. So extra money, you knew that, so I'm not teaching you anything new. I'm going to be digging into some more of the details of that budget with the staff tomorrow morning and into the future. And the other thing that I wanted to report on is that beginning tomorrow, the Executive Steering Committee of Drawdown Marin is going to start to hear recommendations from working groups. So those will come and reflect back to us as a town before too long. But the first one on renewable energy is tomorrow afternoon. And that's it for now.
Thank you. Eli?
Not too much to report other than a small bit of unfortunate news from the Central Marin Sanitation Agency. They had a mishap, I think it was Friday afternoon, and the cogeneration engine there has been damaged, so that is going to be offline for repairs for a few months, which is particularly unfortunate as it relates to the upcoming project to build a new cogeneration engine, so we do not have one to rely on in the interim. That is too bad. So, they are obviously great professionals there and have a plan in place to deal with the situation, but it's just a bummer. That's all.
Thank you. Sloan.
I don't have any true report. I have meetings this week, actually. But in any event, I did want to say thank you to Councilmember Jim Andrews. There was a legislative committee meeting last Tuesday. Meetings are typically on Mondays, but they rescheduled for Tuesday. I couldn't make it. Jim jumped in for me, and I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And basically, there's a fair number of housing bills still teed up in Sacramento heading our way. The ones that I would watch are one, there's for the ADU, there's numerous ones dealing with ADUs. Most of them would lessen or remove the owner occupancy requirement. And the other one would reduce the required parking requirements. That's just sort of a general tenor of what they're doing. Also, there was an interesting bill from, I think it's Assemblyman Chu, where basically it has to do with marijuana, and if your town voted for it, then you will be required to have at least one retail facility in your town unless you go back and get a vote of the populace saying, no, we don't want it. So I have no idea where that stands, but I sort of looked at it and it's like, okay, we better keep an eye on this and then think about what we want to do if we're going to have an election next March. So.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
I just was going to report, we should have reported on this last meeting, but it was getting late. But we had a Central Marin Police Authority meeting. Sloan and I attended, and we approved the fiscal year budget, full-time salary listings, as well as the building operations and maintenance budget. And that same night, we had a Central Marin Fire meeting, and we approved the fiscal 2019, fiscal 2020 budget as well. So I just wanted to report on that. And that's it for town council reports. Review of draft agenda for upcoming town council meeting, item 8A. Anything? Questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none.
Are we all supposed to bring a gift?
Then we will, if you want. And then I guess we will adjourn and we will open up the sanitary district meeting, right? Yeah. So I'm going to open the Tuesday, June 4th meeting of sanitary district number 2.
What do we need to do? Do we need to do anything?
I think we still need to,
Take roll.
yeah.
And the whole thing.
I'm not going to do this, look at it.
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Board Member Beckman?
Here.
Board Member Kuhnhart?
Present.
Board Vice President Andrews?
Yes.
And Board President Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, we just did roll call, so we will now have public comment. Is there any member of the public who would wish to address items that are not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. There are no presentations. Consent calendar, the purpose is to group items together which are routine or been discussed previously, do not require further discussion. Any member of the public, staff, or the district board may remove an item for discussion. Is there anyone who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Or I'll entertain a possible motion.
So moved.
Second.
Approve items 4A and 4B.
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Board Member Beckman?
Yes.
Board Member Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Board Vice President Andrews?
Yes.
Board President Ravazio?
Yes. There are no public hearings. There are 2 business items. 6A, review of the proposed sanitary district number 2 operating budget for fiscal years 2019-20 and 2020 and 21. Staff, thank you.
This item, the first item, is the entire sanitary district budget, both the operating budget and the capital budget. You've seen the capital budget before at the last meeting when the Public Works Director presented it. This budget that I have, the page that says revenue and expenditure summary, I've divided all of the various expenditures into different categories of the operating expenses, the debt service, which is paid to CMSA, the grant programs that were discussed at a previous meeting, and then the capital projects, which were listed on a separate page. So the budget for the sanitary district is increasing compared to the current fiscal year's budget by about $4.5 million. Most of that, or a good portion of that, about $3 million of that being capital projects, which were, again, listed on the next page and discussed previously. And then another $1 million has to do with the grant programs that were discussed last time, the private sewer lateral grant program, the lower lateral CIP pilot program grant, and then a low-income grant program. Additionally, $225,000 is an additional expenditure for the town staff providing sanitary district services. In the current year, $450,000 is the amount paid to the town. And then, as was discussed a couple of weeks ago, the engineering department is adding some personnel, including engineers, and so some of that cost will be offset by the amount that the sanitary district pays to the town. Legal services have been added to the budget for the first time. We didn't have that in the budget last year. And then the other increases, the sewer treatment and disposal, that amount is given to me by CMSA, as is the debt service program payments. So this budget does retain more than the $3 million ending fund balance that was recommended by the Finance Committee in both years. There's about a $9 million ending balance projected for 2019-20 and about $6 million for 2021. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. And again, we are not actually approving the budget tonight, we're providing direction. So first off, is there any question from the council? Yes?
I do just a couple things. Let me just give you in serial, and then you can answer it however you like. First of all, can you describe just generally why is there a fairly sizable legal services budget when there hasn't been for some time? Does it have to do with reviewing the contracts or something? Secondly, why is it that pump station maintenance has gone up fairly significantly? I mean, it's because everything's breaking down, or does it have to do with the new projects or something? I don't know. And those were my 2 questions.
Okay, with respect to the legal services, I think there always had been legal expenditures, but they just were not
captured under some other line item?
Yeah, they just were not charged to the sanitary district. The town just paid the bills, and I don't know that it will necessarily be $100,000 next year. I put that in as sort of a placeholder because it's about halfway or at some point during the year we started charging to the sanitary district, and so I didn't really have like a good feel for what it would be, so I just put that in as a placeholder, that $100,000. When I prepared this, we had spent about $15,000, and that was only a portion of the year, so I thought just to be safe I would put in the $100,000. And maybe the Public Works Director could answer about the pump station maintenance, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Board Member Bailey. So what's happening with the pump station maintenance, it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the first hand, we don't do that with our existing staff. we contract that out to CMSA staff. So some of the costs that go into that are escalations that happen as CMSA's cost goes up for services over time. The second point that you mentioned is real. We are noticing that our pump stations, due to their age, are requiring more maintenance. There are certain pump stations, one that's being rebuilt right now, the Trinidad 2, which you all authorized for about $1.8 million. That rebuild is going to save us some money in terms of maintenance because we're going to have new equipment there. We're going to have an open space that's not confined in terms of access. And so I think what I would say is that my hope is the relationship of the capital budget over time is going to do the best that we can as a sanitary district to kind of control our maintenance costs by improving the state of those pump stations. That we have control over. What we don't have control over is, what it costs to contract out with CMSA. They're very skilled. We really appreciate the fact that they come out 24/7. Of course, we pay overtime when they're, weekend and night service. But at the same time, some of those costs is out of our hands. And what I would point you to is that the actual cost is around $700,000 in this last year that ended in 2019.
Where are you, Peter? Sorry.
In column 2, the revised budget is 692. I call that 700. Then if we're, when I talked to Daria about it, we thought that 800 was a fair amount. That's based on what they're billing us and what we're paying. I've also been working with them and our own staff to kind of distinguish between maintenance and capital. A lot of times in their billing, when they bill us, they kind of mix the two. But because they're different in our budgets and we fund them differently, I'm really trying to draw a harder line. Okay, are we maintaining existing infrastructure or is this a capital expenditure? So it turns out that the maintenance is a pretty high cost indeed.
Thank you.
What is fog source control?
Fats, oils, and grease. So we need to spend a lot more time. We don't do a great. FOG is a better acronym. FOG sounds like something that
when it was fog.
rolls in over the Golden Gate Bridge as opposed to causes sewer spills. But yeah, that's what we're looking to do is reduce the infiltration of those into the system, which cause spills.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. We're going to open it up for public comment then. Now's the time for public comment. If you're a member, there's a member of the public who wishes to speak, if you could please come to the microphone and address.
I'll say something. I don't have anything.
Can you please come to the microphone? Thank you very much.
I live, my name is Allison Pence. I live on Granada, which is above El Camino, which is on that list. There's always somebody going through our sewer systems because we live on Ring Mountain and there's so much water. There's so much water coming off Ring Mountain day and night. And all summer long there's water in our gutters. And that's because there's some sort of a code, a building code, where gutter water gets straight to the street. And so it goes into the street, it goes into your sewers, and it shouldn't. It should be banked in the soil. We should bank it, homes should bank it. I talked to a friend of mine in Sonoma. They can't put their gutters out to the street anymore. It's not legal. So we need to bank water coming off of Ring Mountain in our soils wherever we can so that it's not affecting the sewers during the rainy season. And El Camino's below sea level or something. It's going to flood. And so I think the more we can change our building codes and allow for rainwater to be banked in soils, the better off we'll be in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public who would wish to comment? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close public comment and we'll bring it back to the council for questions, discussion. Did you have something, David? You sound like you were...
I was just going to ask Peter Brown if he could deal with the potential confusion of sanitary and storm sewer and how we separate them in our town.
We hope we do.
I mean, certainly older communities have overflow and they do interact with one another, but we don't have any places where they are interconnected.
Well, not not in theory, but in practice we do, because of the imperfections in our sanitary system. So when we get heavy rain flow, we get infiltration of stormwater into our sanitary district system. That's why at CMSA, when it rains really hard, the amount of water they need to treat increases tenfold. So that's a real issue.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Well, I think what I was saying was that we had 3 5-inch storms this winter, and at the end of the third one, we had, I think we treat at CMSA, where Board Member Beckman is a member of that Central Marin Sanitation Agency Board. A dry time, they're in the 8 to 10 million gallon a day treatment, and they're up over 100 million gallons a day when we get those really heavy rainstorms. So we have a closed system, but it's old and it's imperfect, and so that's something that this capital program is attempting to address.
But the stormwater system, which was referred to as gutters and street drains, is independent of sanitary sewers and goes
Only in
into
theory,
the bay.
Board Member Beckman. In reality, water. Excuse me, Kuhnhart. Sorry.
Don't do them the disfavor.
In reality, stormwater goes right into our sanitary system. Because if you don't have a completely sealed system, or if you have vitrified clay pipe and the water's saturated, the water leaks into the system, and you don't really want to treat stormwater, but you end up doing it anyway, even if you don't want to.
It's one of the reasons why we're encouraging the sewer lateral replacement
Exactly.
program, because that's where a lot of it's coming from.
A big chunk
Sewer
of it.
laterals. Yeah. That's what other sanitary districts are doing too. Yes,
Can I ask Peter a question as well?
of course.
So Peter, I'm totally good with the budget and the programs for the capital improvement, but I'm still stuck on the pump station issues. So I count 7 pump station projects on the capital improvement project list. Of those 7, can you just flag which are the ones that are kind of ramping up the increased cost, almost doubling the cost of our maintenance in the last year or two? Is it one of these 7, or is it some others?
Yeah, I couldn't do that right now on the spot. I'd have to go back and look at the invoices from CMSA. Again, the difficulty here is that we get billed on a monthly basis.
Right.
We audit those.
I don't doubt they're right. Here's where I'm going with that. The reason I'm stuck on it is an extra $400,000 a year, which is what it is now from the year before last, or what it's estimated to be. It quickly becomes enough added maintenance cost to justify prioritizing. I'd leave it to you, Peter. I'm really not putting myself, but from a layman's standpoint, it seems like that's enough sort of dramatic increased annual cost to justify prioritizing the pump station rehabilitation projects a little earlier in the game. Because if it only costs, for example, some of these are $100,000, did it 2 years early. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. So what I'll do is I'll work with CMSA to kind of hone in on some of those costs, because I haven't asked them that question, but I will hone in with them and their staff on where those costs are coming from, and I'll use that to inform the ranking of the pump station projects.
Let me tell you the reason why I'm cautious to even suggest that to you, though, Peter, because even though the cost may be dramatically increasing year upon year, they may still work, so it's not a danger. Whereas some of these other projects, if you don't prioritize it now, maybe there are other consequences that are even more severe. So I don't mean to put my own kind of 2 cents in there, other than to point out that the annual additional maintenance cost is significant. And if we can defray that by swapping around the sequence by which we do the projects, maybe we save money, that's all. Well, I'm not suggesting you didn't already look at that, that's all.
Thank you. Any other further comments or direction for staff on the budget? No? Okay. We're going to move on to item 6B, which is a review of the proposed sanitary district capital improvement budget for fiscal years 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021.
Thank you, President Ravasio, members of the board. Again, similar to the last item, we reviewed this 2 weeks ago, and what we wanted to do was to bring it to you 3 times, just so we have lots of time to look at it. We have lots of time for the public and board members to find things to give us information on. There are no significant changes to the list of projects before you from the last meeting. I do think that what I can do before the next meeting, I won't be here, but Todd will be here and maybe other sanitary district reps that can help you out. But I'll attempt to kind of answer that question on if there's a way to prioritize pump station replacements to decrease maintenance costs. But in terms of where we're at now, having discussed this with your board last time and reviewed it over the last week or two, we're pretty comfortable that these are the projects that we're looking to deliver. It's around $6.7, $6.8 million each of the next 2 years. That's an ambitious list of projects to deliver. And again, there's a couple unknowns, both of which your board approved in the last meeting, and those are those pilot programs. You know, are we going to incur a lot of costs with either the private grant, sewer lateral grant program, or the lower lateral CIP program? We're not 100% sure on how much of those $500,000 we're going to use. Obviously, if we don't use all of it, we'll roll it back, come back and ask you if you want to make those programs permanent or not. But the budget before you is a few big ticket items. The pre-paving for the sewer rehab is item 12 there. That is the biggest expense in the district over the next 2 years. And that really is lining up our, to Board Member Kuhnhart's point, you know, we have a lot of places where water is getting into our system and sewage is leaking out of it. And so those pipes need to be replaced. And for me, the best time to replace those is before we put a 15 to 20 year multi-million-dollar new road surface on top of it. So we're doing a really good job. The staff is doing a really good job, both RJ Succo and Fernanda Stefanik, of coordinating those two programs, I think, better than we've done in the past. So those will be your biggest expenditures over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Questions from council? Yes.
A few years ago, with the previous council, there is an issue with, what is it, Paradise K. Do we have to put in a pump station there, or is the gravity flow still working over there?
Well, there's a pump station there. Trinidad 2 is the one that's being replaced. That's the one that serves a lot of Paradise K and then pumps it uphill and then over down towards the Paradise pump station. So that project is a $1.1 million project in there. That's what we need to spend in construction between now and June 30th. And that is a rebuild of that entire pump station.
Okay. As I recall, there was a couple of streets where it's questionable which way the mains were going to keep flowing, and there's thought that they might need to put in a pump station.
Oh, a new pump station. I think that this particular project is going to solve our issues in terms of getting enough head, we call it, to push the water where it needs to go.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, then we're going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public member of the public who wishes to comment on this particular item? Okay, hearing none, then I will bring it back to the council. And again, we are not voting on this tonight. We're just providing direction. So is there any additional direction from council?
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, then we will move on to item 7, district manager and board member reports. District manager first.
Nothing to report?
Great, thank you. Any board member reports?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely none. Let's see, we do have a draft agenda. Any comments? Not really. Oh, that's right. It just says there's one, but there's not really one. Okay. So then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.